Hey, I'm Stefan.
Hi, I'm Philipp.
And I'm Gabriele, and if you are trying to understand what works in 3D GenAI today, you are in the right place. Over the last 2 years, Philipp and Stefan have created in-depth tutorials, tested hundreds of tools and workflows, and built a following of more than 100,000 artists and creatives. But today, we'll do something different.
We will look at the best 3D AI generators right now, paid and open source.
What it takes to set up a ComfyUI environment to get the most out of local workflows.
Also, we get into use cases from game development to 3D printing and VFX, because not all models solve all workflows.
We will look at part segmentation, textures, and me and Stefan's recent tests around motion.
While I will attempt an impossible challenge, convincing them that AI-generated Gaussian splatting are better than meshes. So buckle up and welcome Philipp and Stefan under the spotlight. So let me start by asking, what is the best 3D GenAI tool at the moment and why?
For now, we have to decide between two different topics because obviously we have paid tools, but also open source tools. And I would say, this is of course my personal opinion, but from our latest tests, and this might change weekly because we see that all the time with new updates coming and so on. But what we saw from Tripo so far on the paid side tools was really promising. We saw great improvements in shape details, but also texturing wise, it's quite strong, and especially their smart mesh topology mode they introduced is really strong and something we didn't see so far in that detail. And I think this is for the paid tools. Stefan, I think you can agree when we're talking about open source. I think we are both here on the same line, saying that Trellis 2 is probably the best option we have out there at the moment. It stands out really as the main 3D AI generator you will always choose above anything else when it comes to open source at the moment.
Yeah, I totally agree about the open source Trellis. Definitely, that was when it released. It was already clear that it's like a revolution on the open source. I would say Trellis even has one highlight that even any other paid 3D AI doesn't have. It's like they are first to support transparency. Like they understand the mesh as a transparent and apply the correct PBR material. That's like super cool. Like I was creating like fish bowls, and like the bowl was created as a sphere, transparent one. So very huge, right? For the paid, I agree with Philipp like in this one because it's changing quite fast. Last month, we got updates from Tripo. And I would say I split it a little bit more like high poly and low poly because it's like quite different in terms of how they train these models, right? So the first one is like how good shape is understood. The second one is another algorithms together with the AI, how they build up the mesh. And we're seeing that, with P1, Tripo also shows really good low poly, but I would say, if we're talking particular about low poly, still Hunyuan with Polygen 1.5 is like part of the Hunyuan, their mesh, like especially quads. And low poly maybe is better than Tripo. So, but for high poly, Tripo is definitely best at this very moment as we speak, because if tomorrow Rodin 2.5 or whatever happens, we're going to need to revisit it.
So, and maybe the question to follow up, Stefan, right? Because one of the, let's say, platforms that you have built is this top 3D AI, right? That there is this like ranking from, let's say, users about how they see and evaluate, right? So there is a scoring system. People can pick between two blind voting options and go for it. Have you seen some kind of like drastic changes, or have you seen also top 3D performing based on how you also feel about certain models? Like, how is that platform reliable to assess how these models are evolving over time when a new one comes? Is this like representing what is your technical expertise as a 3D artist?
Absolutely. It reflects the current state, exactly what we just described. It reflects this. Of course, like paid can be better than free tools. That's that's reasonable, right? But the progress free like open source tools like Trellis does is amazing, and I would say like it is actually start to be looking like work in production. Philipp shows like amazing ways to put that plugin like and stuff. So about top 3 AI, the thing is, the reason why I created that like around 6 months ago is it was very hard to keep up the pace. There was 10 at that point. There was 10 providers, and there was pretty much on the same level. So, and I would say at that time it was more about the subject. Like some was good with faces and stuff. Things changed this year with Triple. It's really going high, and Hunyuan 3.1 as well. So now they're taking lead. There's also like a tool called Vivo. They're good with texturing and stuff. People also like it. But right now we sort of hit the ceiling with these two main providers, and they doing really good. I mean, obviously they are most funded. If you know, like Tencent and Triple also raise a lot of money, and I know they investing into training models and maybe so the interval, the period is like around 3 months. In 3 months, we might see some updates, hopefully very good for us.
So then if you then had to pick one though, because we said, okay, among paid is this one, and among open source is, so among paid is Triple, among open source is Trellis. But if you only could choose one model to create your 3D models, which one would you go for?
Well, I guess this definitely depends on your use case and what you prefer. So when you really,
I ask about you, Philipp. So that was the thing for you.
Your use case.
For my use case. So I would say for my use case, when I would really go for the best quality at the moment in time, then I would probably choose Triple in case I have the budget. Because obviously, you know, they have a huge budget. They spend a huge money on training their models. And of course, they did a great job actually to deliver us great quality. And in case you have some budget, that's probably the best choice you can make at the moment. But when it comes to solutions like that, you are in a studio pipeline, let's say it like this, or you have to rely on offline solutions as well, where your privacy matters, where you signed NDAs, for example, then this is really where Trellis shines, because this is where you then start implementing. You can iterate on hundreds of assets that you can generate locally, and you don't rely then on, you know, the restrictions that might Triple or some other paid AI editor gives you at a certain point, because you can customize it as much as you want in ComfyUI, for example, by applying and combining it with other methods as well, what I partly show in my videos. So it really depends on use case, but for me personally, Triple is the best choice you can have right now when it comes to.
And of course, we're going to dive into ComfyUI, because that is, let's say, the turnkey solution to understand how this world of 3D Gen AI. But then, Stefan, what about you?
Well, I don't want it to look like a Triple promotion, but Triple is definitely the choice right now. But let me give some advice if there will be people watching first time hearing about 3D AI. Do not start with paid tools, since there is Hunyuan, absolutely free, that give you a perfect sense. It's like 20% worse than Triple in some details, maybe like texture. But overall, it's very, very good quality, especially to try it out for free first. When you're ready, when you understand that you get something from it, go to Triple. It will just save you more time. You get better results and first try, right? So it's like, again, I would say like with Trellis, with right approach, you can also get the same results if you split model in parts, so join it, etc. Philipp shows all of that, but it all comes to time, I guess, right? So for any commercial projects, etc., I will definitely prefer using Triple, because I just remove that headache and we'll just go and create stuff, you know.
What I also really appreciate, by the way, just to add that on Hunyuan 3D, you have Hunyuan 3D Studio, and they have a really great interface, but also like a really nice segmentation tool, actually. So when you're planning to first generate your 3D model and then split it in parts, in my opinion, this is the best choice you have right now, and it even outperforms Tripo at the moment in segmentation, because especially on hard surface meshes, it's really precise to really cut the model in parts and regenerate those, that we have those details. So definitely something worth to check out.
I will first time disagree about segmentation. I mean, for me, it's not useful anywhere. Same as like rigging, etc. Because technically, you're gonna get best results if you just split and generate separate images. That will be 3-4 times better than you go in Hunyuan and like paint the parts and split them. At least for now.
Yeah. I agree. I partly agree with it, but when you have like, let's say, you have like 50 models that you would like to generate, splitting them all into single parts in the image first would take you a lot of time, and you can automate that with Hunyuan at the moment by just generating those 50 models and then taking them into automatic segmentation, which is of course a big time saver. And especially since Hunyuan 3D is doing quite a good job, you might not get the maximum quality you get when splitting them apart, as you mentioned, Stefan, but I think it's the time saver by, using then the automated approach, probably.
So I love how the conversation went deep already into segmentation. And I think there might be a world where people don't even know that these models can be actually segmented, right? Because that is something that is a relatively new development, especially it has only recently become efficient enough to be somehow useful, right? So maybe why don't we start, Stefan, with an overview. What can be done? What are the models currently that can actually split a 3D model in parts? Can you give us some, let's say, benchmark and examples? I don't know if you can share any of the models that maybe you can kind of like have looked in the past, maybe from top 3D AI or so on.
Well, there's not much really who does really decent segmentation. I would list them like there's like 4 of them. We do have the category segmentation on top 3D AI. It's Hunyuan, as Philipp mentioned, and I also consider it's the best in segmentation. Then we have Tripo. Hopefully they will update this tool soon because it's not good enough right now. Hitem 3D, which is recently rebranded to Hi 3D. They also did a tool, and we do have Rodin. I think those tools are cool, but they give less control. For example, Rodin, you sort of press a button and it shows you like we will split like that, and you're like agree or disagree, right? Hunyuan make it actually like possible to use. Tripo also, but Tripo has like a little bit worse, approach in general. And Hunyuan, you basically get a paint, like a brush, and you just paint the areas. So because I don't know any that will do segmentation perfectly right now that like define parts that way. Neither I can say. But at least Hunyuan give you that brush and define, like extract parts nicely. So, but again, I can think like of some cases where this can be used, but realistically, I never used it like in any near production cases.
And why is that? Like, I mean, let's imagine that you are in a situation where you have, for example, a car, right? Or maybe a sword. Is that because there is not a need? Like 3D artists don't work like that? They don't kind of like kit bash 3D models? Like, why you haven't used that?
Now, let's say car, right? We do have wheels, we do have body, and I guess glasses.
Doors, maybe.
I'd rather, define nice parts, create them separately, and they combine them in Blender, right? It's a holy war, actually, about what is fast using AI or like doing like with skilled. I would say it's in the middle. Skilled guys will do that way faster than I go and paint that in the brush in 3D Hunyuan Studio. I'll just join the objects. Like, it will be faster, like the time matter, right? And I will know for sure that the result is guaranteed instead of generation is like always a guess. But for starting point, like generating body or wheel, make perfect sense for me now.
So, Stefan, then we have touched about also, it's clear that there is not one model that wins it all. And in time, there will be a model catching up with one specific element, like, for example, texturing or segmentation, right? And maybe another one for, let's say, the geometry or maybe the low poly features. Now, when we think about, is it possible, for example, using ComfyUI based on your experience to take the best of these models and how they evolve in time to evolve a workflow, for example, that is customized and that uses the different best part of each model?
Well, let me introduce Philipp here, because he will definitely give more information. I'll just say that I'm stopped using Comfy for the last 4 or 5 months because I was more focused on the use cases. But there is a truth about Comfy that Comfy is not just running a model locally. It's also about building up workflows, right? So you can combine some best of it, like in a workflow and stuff. And I would say it even makes sense plugging like paid models there, like Hunyuan, anything by API, and plug into the workflows, combining things together. So yeah, Philipp will give you a full breakdown about it.
Hunyuan 3D and Tripo, they have like API intersections that you can then use in ComfyUI basically, and then to combine it also with, for example, Trellis to mesh texturing and so on. Basically there are a lot of ways how you can combine workflows and use them to your advantage basically then in case you would like to have more control with those tools, I would say.
So when it comes to using and mix matching all of this, right? How stable is this workflow? And also, like, in a sense, first of all, to set up, because of course one of the advantage of this cloud solution is that you can drop an image, boom, you get a 3D model. Of course, you get much less control on what you generate, but in general, setting up and getting, for example, more advanced, so to say, workflow where you have a segmentation and texturing, increased resolution of the texturing and so on. How hard it is to set up and do things kind of like break.
Yeah, that's a really good point that you mentioned that, because obviously with ComfyUI there's this challenge that we need to combine, or at least have the challenge to apply multiple custom nodes that we install into one ComfyUI environment. And this is a huge thing because each custom node package comes with its own Python dependencies. And you will quickly notice that once you start, especially using 3D AI tools in ComfyUI, you will be faced with those obstacles because a lot of users using different, for example, CUDA, but also PyTorch versions inside their ComfyUI environments. And this then comes with its own challenges because each version needs its own kind of installation, configured wheels, and so on. We are trying at Pixel Artistry to make this as easy as possible by implementing, for example, automatic installation scripts. And we rely heavily on the ComfyUI Easy Install package that Ivo developed, which is, by the way, also used by the Pixel Roma community, for example, because it has the big advantage that everyone is using the same PyTorch and CUDA version in a portable ComfyUI environment. And this makes it way easier than to actually writing installation scripts for it, so that you basically can just click 2 buttons or 3 buttons and then it will install for you all the required packages without going now too deep. But you can, for example, install then Flash Attention by 1 click. You can install Sage Attention, but also then those solutions like then Trellis to Trellis to GGUF, what I showed, that you can then run it actually on your own GPU with even 6 gigabytes of VRAM, which is of course a game changer in case you don't have that strong GPU. And but there are a lot of things that you have to consider. So we try to make this as easy as possible. But obviously, when you go with a cloud solution, you don't have to bother with that stuff, basically.
Yeah, I was one day spent like 12 hours like trying to figure out a ComfyUI setup with all these dependencies, and then I decided, no,
I quit.
yes, I leave it
I don't
to
blame you.
Philipp. He can do that. Like, I mean, but that's a lot of effort. I mean, Philipp puts a lot of energy into building up that and creating that ComfyUI custom builds and stuff, and that is really appreciated. I mean, I was trying to do that as like again, like we also need to consider different devices, right? Different hardware that also has some details. That's and there's a lot of people again like this is disappointed that on their machine it's not running for some reason, right? And like this, like you need to figure out the workaround or like try keep up with these cases. And well,
because it's not only that you have like different CUDA and PyTorch versions, it's also there are people running it on Mac, there are people running it on Linux, and then obviously most of my audience at least use Windows, but there's still this hurdle that the different NVIDIA GPUs, they have different architecture types. So it doesn't mean that when it runs on an, let's say, RTX 4090, that it will automatically also run on an RTX 5070. So this is something, really tricky to figure out, at least, what kind of wheels we can take there. So definitely not that easy. And there's, of course, this whole debate. For example, we at a certain moment, at least for now, there's no real solution to run it on an AMD GPU, for example. And this is, of course, really frustrating. And I totally get that from our audience, for the users who are using AMD. But there's unfortunately no way really at the moment to run it. And I hope this gets resolved soon, as seen that we have a kind of fork or something for that.
So let's split audiences in two groups, right? So there is one that is not really into that. They want to start using ComfyUI. What would be the advice for them? And then in case there is this ever-changing landscape, right, with new stuff coming out for, let's say, setting up this in a more stable fashion, also for them, where can they stay up to date? Because you mentioned, Philipp, that you are building these resources. You mentioned some places where this thing is like work in progress. Can you guys maybe try to give high level, and maybe Philipp in this case, to start, I want to just create one model where I put an image and get a 3D model just to experiment and learn and getting ComfyUI for the first time running on my PC. What should I do?
I mean, it sounds a bit silly, but I guess it's checking out my first video about how actually to setting up ComfyUI easy install package, and also then to combine it with Trellis 2. We also developed like a website, just like a landing page where you can see the whole Trellis 2 installation guide step by step. And then you can go from there, because there it's really explained how to set up ComfyUI the first time, also how to then apply Trellis 2, and then you can from there go and upload your first image basically and play around with it. And I think this is for now at least a resource I would go in case you would like then to further explore ComfyUI. There's a really great community around that, especially on the Tencent Hunyuan 3D Discord, which I always recommend people to join, because they are like really great guys. For example, Visual Bruno, who also developed ComfyUI Trellis 2 so that we even can run it, which is simply amazing. Because, I mean, it's all open source, right? And they just put in their time, their free time, and they get not paid for it or something. And they put all that for the community, and to really also push the paid tools that they further develop, for example, because obviously the paid tools have to improve more and more over time. When open source gets better, then they always have a reason to, get on top of that. So it's really cool to see that, that they try to push each other, basically.
And so maybe, Stefan, there is also this thing that seems like there is this continuous chase, right, about this paid model, big funding, that gets better and better. There is the community instead that keeps developing open source, and also the ecosystem around it. Where do you think are we headed? Like, will be going to Will paid win or will open source win?
Let me I break it down like in a different way, right? So let's say we, at some point, like I think we all three here believe at some point it will be solved with AI, right? So like, boom, 3D model is created. So what's next? So I think it really doesn't matter. I think the price will go low anyway. Again, open source running ComfyUI, it's not technically free because you seem to have to buy a GPU, right? You seem to have to buy a nice machine, right? For people who do not have money, I would say like accumulating $1 is way easier than accumulating 3,000 to buy nice NVIDIA GPU, right? So it's a back and forth discussion there. Of course, for those who work in the industry, that is definitely a good option right now, of course. But later, I think it goes to whoever will show the shortest use case that solves some particular stuff, like create model, drop right away into Unreal Engine game or something like that. So like you creating something in Unreal Engine, you pressing buttons, boom, boom, fence, house, wall, and sort of that. That will be where it goes, whether that will be Trip or whoever. Because they are hitting some level, like I can feel that, like sort of sense it, like they are going that either like it's sort of like same like people talking about LLMs, right? Like when this AGI happens. So, but they are now they hit some level, and now what we see like 5.3, 5.4, or Claude 4.6, 4.7. Same happens here, really. They add more layers of polishing. Same happens with Trellis, and we can see that open source, like what's like level of refiners, like they're better, improving, right? On the foundation level, I think it will be a little bit slower, or at some point, extremely big step forward, and let's say it's sold, right? So I would say, I don't know who's gonna win, but both will be almost equal at some point, because paid will drop the price. Open source will require less GPU, right? But still require GPU or anything. Or maybe we see the opposite. Open source will stuck because there will be a big gap, and it will require like GPU minimum 24 gigs. So can't answer that, but I definitely know that it will drop in the use case, that direction will win.
And I think, okay, you gave me the political answer, and that's fine. But there is also another element that we forgot, in a sense, that we think about 3D GenAI as one thing. But as you correctly mentioned, of course, it's per use case. And we forgot to think like, okay, there is the VFX artist, there is the game developers, and there is who does 3D printing, for example. That is another world, and not my feeling is that not every model will be equally good at doing all of those. So I was wondering, Philipp, is there, you feel like, how should different use cases or figure, let's say, profiles in the industry approach 3D GenAI?
Yeah, that's actually quite interesting, though, because when you look at, for example, the 3D printing guys in our audiences, they are more interested in having really the highest details in their shapes. So because it makes sense, though, right? When you print it, you want to have the best quality. It should look nice, and they want to have, for example, for figures, and they want to have the best quality there. While for, let's say, VFX artists, it's also very important how the texturing is looking like in the end. How does it react to PBR lighting in a real, and it should look photoreal in the end, right? What we are looking for. And this is something like a 3D printer does not that much care about at the moment, at least, So for example, and Stefan has some really cool videos about that. For example, for 3D printing, Heighten 3D is a really great option here when you go with that. So they really, they really try to make sure that, when you export it out there, that you have a solid mesh that you can prepare then also for 3D printing. So and I think, as I mentioned, Stefan made some really cool videos about that. I think there's also use cases, for example, when it comes to game development, where you can then more rely on, for example, on Tripo with their smart mesh topology. As we mentioned already, this is a great use case there. And it's really at the end where you're coming from, what you would like to generate. I also get a lot of questions like for Trellis 2, for example, how we can then also export it without textures, because some people don't care, but others, they are really like, okay, we need texturing solved now, it's the biggest hurdle I have, and so on. So it's really interesting to see that intersection. Also, for some of us are only interested in architectural modeling, for example, for visualization and so on, and that makes total sense. And there, for some, low poly characters really matter, for some others don't. So definitely interesting to see that though. And I think there are different solutions, but for 3D printing, as a good example, I would go for example, with Heighten 3D at the moment.
Yeah.
And Stefan, no, please fill up, because I think you have made a lot of those videos that I think people should absolutely check on your channel if you are into 3D printing, but please add on.
Yeah, for the 3D printing, I figured out that High 3D is previously Heighten. That was actually very good. I would also recall that there was, they started their journey with releasing Spark 3D paper, right? And that was, I believe, like it was 9 months ago, and it was like, wow, like so geometry is so sharp, like we can finally define some models. And I would say even now, I can see that it can be better than Tripo for geometry, purely geometry. And for 3D printing, that's obviously the most important part. I would just add one more example. That's not really like foundation AI model, but there's a tool built around that does, let's say, solving texturing better than any foundation model. It's like a MUDI, developed by one guy, basically. He uses like, like quite advanced, like when image with LoRa's, etc., to do this. And he has like some unique approach, but that tool really does texturing quite cool. Right? It's like a Substance Painter, but like AI version of it. And I was playing it with it like myself, and even gave it to my team. Like we, with Philipp, we also use that in our collab videos, because that's the answer, like for how to make texture works. Because I would say 100% of times you generate anything in Tripo or Hunyuan, it will be imperfections. And for me, that's not an issue, because I can open Blender or whatever software and like address that. For newbies, like, or people who explore it like first time, that's like quite difficult path, right? That's a lot of software. And ModDiff offers like, okay, just turn it like on the right angle, paint, generate it. Textures melt inside very nice. So there's also like, I really like this example.
That's nice. And is this working on the web? Does this work locally? How is the, let's say, setup for a newbie, so to say?
It has like a free tier on web. For a similar thing, I would say, is a stable Projectorz, right, Philipp? Like available.
Yeah, exactly. When you would like to go fully local, then probably stable Projectorz is the choice at the moment, even though it's not as accessible, I would say, as MODIF when it comes to the interface and so on, where MODIF did a really great job, I would say, especially the guy behind MODIF, which is
just one
really
guy.
cool to see. I mean, it's crazy what he is putting out. So huge shout out to him.
And so go and check it out, because I think actually I didn't know about it. So I know I have some homework right after this. But I have a question here. I might I don't know if I'm throwing a curveball, if you guys have ever seen this, because we haven't mentioned it also even before when we were looking at some of the topic to discuss. And that is, what if we don't need textures? And what I mean is, have you guys seen Little model from Apple? So they are doing, when you say Trellis is the best model right now that is open source, and then Apple came up with this, where you see that on the left, we do have instead a Gaussian splatting based model with those view dependency effects that, of course, are not, let's say, generated by the standard 3D geometry. So in this case, on the right on Trellis, you do have it's still a splats, because if you zoom it in, we are still talking about Gaussian splatting, but then all the view dependency effects are baked in. On the left, there is instead Little that has this effect. So what's your stance on 3D GenAI and Gaussian splatting? Have you dived into it? Because some of those models, like for example, Send3D or others, do generate splats. What are your thoughts? Maybe we can start with Philipp.
I have to be honest, I didn't look that much into Gaussian splats yet, but I saw that, for example, Corridor Crew released a really detailed video about it, which I still need to check out regarding it. But what I can say so far is that, of course, it's going to be a really useful tool that can be also used in VFX production, for example. We are looking into this also to implement this in the pipeline in our VFX studio, because you actually see, right, that it's capturing a lot of details. When we would go and talking about like, okay, we need at the end a retopologized character, for example, that we would like to have, then I think this is a different topic, right, for the use case. So yeah.
Absolutely, I agree. Stefan, what's your thought?
Well, I did like more in-depth, I think, tests, especially when it was Sound3D. Right. So Sound 3D was cool, like segmentation, understanding of the shapes, blah, blah, blah. But under the hood, it was Gaussian splatting. And there is also a library that basically bakes Gaussian splatting into the mesh. And it's awful. It's awful because Gaussian splats represents clouds, let's say, right? This is like just clouds of information. And while untouched, it looks cool. But you try to, like, when we talk about mesh, right, it's like some parts separated, some logical stuff, like the tube must be a tube, right, blah, blah, blah. That's not about it, right? It's about capturing. It's like making a photo, three-dimensional photo. Like the mesh is something, the next level is something that you can work with, right? It's like, again, if we try to think about game developments, right, how like the percentage of all meshes are static, like it's going lower and lower, right? It's like it's all about to be rigged to be dynamic, like destroyable, you know, like work with the physics engine. So I would say I really like how this works, because I think that still sort of supports the overall evolution of 3D AI. But the use case for me is very narrow right now. Like it's a lot of headache, like to drop and run Splats in Unreal Engine, right? And Unity, I'm not sure if it's possible without a headache. In 3GS, you can run it through special library. It's very hard to combine with something else. So the problem is the use case. And like they show it like a wow, like, or like there's a marble for the worlds, they do show a lot. But like what I really want to see is like how this converts into meshes. So that can be like really, really usable, you know?
It's so 3D artist. It's so, I know, and I get it, and it totally makes sense. And that's, I think, so when we think about 3D Gen AI and about generating a 3D model that is, let's say, I think that unless it has a view dependence effect, it doesn't make any sense to generate a splat, like 0 sense, because you wouldn't get what is the real value of the splats, that is the view dependence effect, right? I would wonder and argue if, for example, for a VFX only purpose, for game development, I can agree. But when we look, for example, at VFX space, right, you have something that where you can achieve, if the generated assets has view dependency effect that looks extremely realistic. And again, right now we might not be there yet in terms of the quality, but we know how this works, right? So you might get those ultra realistic effect with the view dependency effect, with this transparency that are very hard for generated meshes, and then have it in something that could be a VFX workflow, or maybe being shown on the web, because a similar asset generated with AI will probably be huge. The texture will be huge again, because it's a different paradigm of 3D. So I'm not trying to convince you, because I know that I will fail, because we have all in view the different kind of, let's say, but I'm excited the moment that I see this view dependence effect being generated by AI. Is like, okay, things are changing. Now it might be worth considering how these look for generating a Splats with AI.
I might be. Oh, sorry. I might be wrong, but for example, I saw some really cool feature videos with Gaussian splats also for like environment stuff, which I think look really cool. And for example, in VFX, we can use it because usually we just use an HDRI, right? Like a dome light that is going around for reflections. But it's of course even more accurate when we can just, use Gaussian splats for that we get really realistic reflections on our 3D character, for example. So I think there are definitely use cases, especially in VFX, where we can start applying that. And so really excited to see that, because so far we're working also a lot of with LiDAR scans at the moment. But Gaussian splats can definitely be a viable solution in the future to, kind of maybe even replace them at some point. Who knows?
Yeah, I saw some paper like maybe a month and a half ago that there's like a way to apply PBR on top of Splats. And I saw the use case in video production, which I think like can be actually already be quite useful. But again, like there's like a lot of ifs and requires like the threshold is quite high, like way higher than like doing like 3D models in game dev stuff. So I think that's the biggest problem of it, right? So there is no simple use case to go into it, even for capturing. Have you seen like how expensive these tools are for nice capturing splats?
Well, I do. I've reviewed some, so if anybody's interested, you can actually check a Portal Cam. But I would argue, how much is a graphic card?
Well, okay, we are even.
But true. But at least you have it as a one-time investment, and then you can use it for multiple years, basically, with a GPU.
Yeah. Or you can go to Hunyuan.
It's not the same for the scanner, you would say, that you can use it for multiple one-time investment?
Yeah, sure. You can also, but with a GPU, you can of course also then use, also for 3D AI solutions and so on, and much more other things as well. So, always depends, of course.
I think you won.
You can also run LLM on that same GPU.
Yes,
not only
exactly.
GenAI,
Yeah.
True.
Touche. I tried to sell you on Gaussian Splat. That was a terrible failure. I should have prepared better.
No, I mean, I definitely agree. It is a really cool thing. And for, again, video production, maybe some realistic games, it definitely need to keep eye on it, right? It's really huge. And again, it also pushes the whole industry, because we're talking about like capturing 3D, like the more accurate and stuff. And if you look at the papers, again, they're like crossing like the way the logic built around like the AI prediction again, like, so they're still very important.
So I just have one more question with Philipp before we kind of like close up a bit. So Philipp, I was wondering, like, since you do all this coverage about ComfyUI, like, have you thought about maybe instead of just putting video, but building something that people can refer to? I don't know, like a course, something like that. Where do you stand there?
Yeah, definitely. I think because there's so much different tools out there which we can combine in ComfyUI, but also, of course, having the accessibility to learn ComfyUI, especially with the focus on 3D. And I think that's really worth it to bring that all together in one package, basically, where you can then really learn each stage of it, like the model generation, like how you can use ComfyUI for texturing, but also for animation. And it doesn't even need just to be ComfyUI, because there are also other great local solutions, for example, like we saw now, I tested, for example, now recently NVIDIA Kimodo to run it locally. And this was also really quite straightforward to set it up in or locally on your PC. And you can run it even also on low VRAM, which is great. And there are a lot of interesting tools. And I think getting really this together, what is achievable and how you can also combine it with existing 3D workflows to really get then a usable production mesh out of it, I think is really exciting to explore. And this is definitely a plan to look forward to then also plan a course around that.
So there is one thing that we haven't touched upon, and the reason was deliberate, because I didn't want to turn this into another conversation of are 3D artists dead on all that we have heard several times. So I would like to ask you the question a little bit different, and that is, don't you ever feel kind of like, I don't know, guilty or somehow responsible for facilitating what is an internet, like a digital space that is full of AI generated content? Like, there is people take bad use of this. They tend to kind of like generate slop, put it outside, and you technically can be part of the problem.
I would say, just to say my take on this, I think Stefan and me, we are actively try to avoiding that people outputting AI slop, because we are teaching them how to create great 3D AI models, basically, that they can then also use and further refine. So I would say it on the different approach that we are trying to, teach people how to use those tools properly, so that exactly what you described is not happening in the end.
Well,
Stefan.
I have like a very long take on that. Very, very important. It comes from, it's very important. What actually means AI slop, right? Let's say AI basically helps you to shape your imagination. So if you have slop here, well, I have bad news for you, right? So if you see some stuff, like most likely that's someone's idea. Like, I mean, before, when AI was generative AI, especially, was in the very beginning. Like the slop comes from that era, right? Like when you try to get something and you get something absolutely crazy. That was funny. But right now you can be quite specific and you get exactly what you prompt or stuff, right? So it's just about explaining your thoughts and seeing like how they reflect into shape. So my journey here started like with fear, I would say. Like, let's say like exactly like 1.5 years ago, it was like fear for my own again, I'm a 10 years engineer, like in 3D. Like I was like doing this for like, since I remember, like I opened my computer, like, wow, 3D graphics. And then I see like, okay, so this basically just, all my skills are completely useless right now, right? So that was complete fear, and I'm honest with myself. And what I did, I just like, okay, I cannot just explore that, because if that's happening, right? But, over year, and by the way, I was watching Philipp's videos in my very beginning, like I swear, like and I said, wow, this guy does really cool stuff, and then I started like to also post more videos, and then at some point, like we actually started making content together. It was so super cool. But what I realized over that year, I would say it was a long process to comprehend, is that we think only about one side, the 3D artists that already in the industry, what will happen to them? And of course, there will be always absolute conservative part of people who like, okay. And again, still people, I mean, there's artificial leather, right? And there's like natural leather, and someone willing to buy that. I guess someone that's willing to pay for a 3D model made with all vertices manual, who gonna know? But I think that's just economically inefficient. But there's another side that we don't see, or not usually covers, is out of the topic. It's like how much people got access to this game development, 3D printing. That's insane. And actually my motivation to keep on with it was people who say wow, I can actually make something now, right? And well, this is not about making slop. There's no slop at all. They making what they dreaming of. There's people want to create some game. They 20 years ago they was thinking, oh, what if I create game like that? And now they're 45 and they were thinking that again, this 3D you need to spend decade, and they do not have decade. They have kids but they still have that dream inside, and that's what keeps us human, right? It's so important part of us. And they say, wow, I can create that with the day, a character, and run with this character in Unreal Engine game. That's the cool thing. And there's it basically extends the market huge. And let's say I'm showing the basic use case. Philipp shows that you can even do that for free, right? It's not cost money, right? There's that's really for free. There's a lot of options to make very cool stuff. So do I feel guilty? Not at all. I feel guilty and sorry for those people who think that who ruins this moment for people. And let's say someone wants to create, and this overall stuff sort of puts a shame mark on it. But that's super stupid. People, not everyone writes text with LLMs, right? It's used everywhere. At some point, oh no, you use AI to write some stuff. Well, that's inevitable. But the thing is that, create, giving this doors opens, that's super cool.
Guys, I think that if anybody was still not sold, I think the best approach is to certainly follow Stefan and Philipp channels and keep following as these technologies evolve. Stay up to date with top 3D AI to learn what is the best model you can use. Stay tuned for Philipp's course coming up soon to help you even customize, run this locally on your PC. Guys, it was a real pleasure to have you.
Thanks a lot. That was big.
Thank you very much for listening in. If you like the show, remember to leave a rating on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or a thumbs up on YouTube. It really helps me keep doing this and shine the spotlights on the greatest founders and makers, pushing the boundaries of XR and AI. Also, make sure to check out the show page xraispotlight.com, where you can find more conversation like this one. Till next time.